Welcome to Shutter and Flow, a podcast for commercial photographers looking to grow their business, stay creative, and keep up with industry trends. I'm Antonelli, and with me is my co-host, Jeremy Freeman. In this episode, we're talking about how to use spec work, pitch decks, and test shoots to open doors with clients, whether you're trying to land a dream brand or pivot into new types of work. This is the stuff that can really move the needle. Jeremy, you just shot a spec project. Do you want to talk about that? We can start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So golf is a passion of mine. It's something I've always loved. I've enjoyed doing. I naturally have my camera when I go on the golf course and I'm walking and shooting. So in that world, I've kind of fallen into, as a freelancer, finding work in the golf industry. And it is a more traditional, as far as the look goes, it's very standard. You see a lot of normal things. So I'm always looking for ways to do something different. How can we mix this up? How can we change this? So I had this idea of, putting LED lights on a golf club, doing a long exposure, but then adding something to it. Because I've seen that done before, but then your subject's blurry. It's not good for commercial ad work. It doesn't make it where you can show off the golfer or show off whatever it is. So I went ahead and thought this out and did a rear curtain sync on the shutter. We're getting technical here, but made it where the subject on the back end, if you shoot in a dark space, is perfectly in focus and you can see them and light them. So one night I went in my backyard and just did it and tested it. Then did it by myself one night. The next 2 nights later, went again and did it. And my son came back there and helped me, and I got some of him and he did some of me. And it was a fun thing for us to kind of play around with. So then I showed it to a friend of mine who runs an agency, and part of their agency is golf stuff. And turns out they were pitching to do something with Live Golf, big creator thing. It got added into the pitch deck that they were presenting to do this thing. Now, we didn't end up shooting that exact thing because just limitations of when we could get talent. And I created a thing that was very specific of space and darkness and whatever it is. But because I did that extra effort to show something different, it immediately put me top of mind, put me in their thought process of, well, of course we're going to have him come do this, even if it doesn't end up being that exact thing, or maybe that gets used later on for something else. But it was just a good lesson for me to push myself and do something different. And then I'm even pushing beyond that a little bit farther.
So when you were first coming up with the idea, the concept of this, because I saw the images, they look awesome. I was like, somebody's really going to love this and want to use it for their brand. When you were actually coming up with this idea, were you coming up with it specifically for this agency, for this particular partnership they have with Live, or were you just wanting to shoot something cool? Once you nailed it, you kind of pitched it to them for that specific shoot?
No, this was an idea that was just in my head that I had honestly, the original idea, I had shot something for the LPGA. They have a big thing every year, whereas the US versus European teams. And I was like, oh, you could do LED lights, make it interesting, make it look like the US flag, make it look like the European flag. Or then there's another league that's indoor golf. And I was like, that's a cooler way to show that's not traditional golf stuff. So no, the purpose was, I had this idea. I wanted to get it out there. Once you start showing it to people, then you're putting it out in the world and sharing it. And you can't always control where it goes. I think we'll get into this on another episode, but creative influences. Stephen Pressfield is author, The War of Art, and it's a lot about getting past that resistance of pushing yourself to do something creative. And then once you put it out in the world, it's like, it's not kind of yours anymore. It is, in this case, yes, I will be the one that hopefully is doing it. But guess what? Also, you have to remember, someone may take this and do something else with it. That's my other influence creatively is Austin Cleland, Still Like an Artist. He has a few other books. You're taking something that exists in one way, turning it a little bit into your own and adding your life experience, your knowledge, your whatever. So in this case, there's historic photos of a famous photographer from the 20s and 30s that would use strobe lights and a long exposure to capture things like golf swings, bullets, things like that that were moving heavily, but it was never done in this way. So I took inspiration from one thing and inspiration from another thing and turned it into my own thing. But the answer is no, it wasn't for a specific thing at the time. And now it is turning into this client, or then that agency has another client that it might be used for, that I'm just talked to them yesterday that it might be happening in June.
Yeah, so you could even, I mean, having seen the images, right, it's not like you did a full test shoot for this image where you brought in a model, you took a studio space and you actually sat and shot it. Just did it quick as a concept. I like that because you're able to then just quickly show the concept to them. It's not really like quite a test shoot, or not quite like doing spec work, but it sort of is, I guess, more on the spec work side, right? Like you're shooting brand specific, idea specific for the agency, and you like wanted to show it to them. But I like that you didn't spend a bunch of money and a lot of time to do a huge test shoot to then pitch it and it not work out. I think I've seen you do this quite a bit with people, and you just show them something that you think is interesting, that you're working on a concept. I've seen other photographers kind of go the opposite route. So I talked to somebody not that long ago who's a photographer. I'm not gonna name him. He did a really amazing shoot. He did 2 shoots in different cities and a really amazing lifestyle shoot, and it looks fantastic. The images are now up on his website, and he's sort of using that work as new portfolio work to try to kind of leverage in putting himself into like another space, right? So I think this is pretty common when somebody is in a niche and they want to jump in and start working in another niche, right? And so you can shoot portfolio work that way, and that's great. This seemed more like a full on shoot that he funded himself in order to show the work. Do you think that's something more people should do if they're trying to switch industries or show different kinds of work? Or do you kind of like a little bit more of your approach, which is a little different, which is I'm not going to do a massive test shoot. I'm just going to do something that I think is interesting and then show it to somebody who it might resonate with?
I think it's a healthy blend of both could be very useful, because if you have the funds and the ability and whatever it may be to do that full on test shoot, it's never a bad thing to have that experience of going through the whole process and doing all the stuff. In my case, on this one, yeah, like you said, it was just me in the backyard. I was literally firing the camera myself because it was 11 o'clock at night and needed to be dark. I was in a hoodie and didn't even have shoes on. And then that ended up being in the pitch deck. Nice. From the agency. I didn't even know about it till later. And like later I look in the pitch deck, I was like, oh, there I am in my backyard. But I do love the idea of, if you want to do something different and move into a different type of photography, you have to prove yourself in that and show it more than just a single shoot. But if that's your goal, maybe you do have to go a little bit farther on those test shoots, or find a client that you can partner with. I would almost recommend this more. Find a not lower end, but maybe less paying, someone that you're not having to put it all out there to do on your own, and provide them with something to show that work and get more of that in your portfolio that's actually for a client and not just a completely spec piece.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that, right? I think professional work where you can also speak that it was done for a client, even if it's low pay or you're kind of giving them a really good deal, to me is always better work to show than trying to build portfolio pieces that are sort of manufactured, right? That come from sort of these test shoots that like nobody's paying for. I feel the same way with post-production, right? Like you can see a retoucher's amazing portfolio that they put together themselves from stock images or from school, or maybe doing free work for people. But that's very different than the work that was actually done for a client. Because you can get something that looks amazing in a portfolio, but can you actually do that same level of work when it actually comes down to it for a client? So you have to also kind of be a little realistic and a little bit honest with yourself of where you're actually at. So if you are a photographer with a couple of years of experience and you haven't run a shoot with 5 assistants and digital techs and stylists and makeup, hair, and everything, and you are presenting work that you have done that and that you can do that, but you haven't, and then a client actually hires you to do that, you're able to sell somebody. Yeah, it's a little bit like a fake it like till you make it. You could do that and get away with it, but it could also crash and burn and turn out really badly. So, and that might ruin a relationship with a potential long-term client that you could get maybe in the future.
Yeah. And I think that also what we were talking about that's part of this too is pitch decks and showing that you can do something and you're presenting to a client. Maybe you have to do that first round of retouching or that first shoot on losing a little money on that. It's not always the best thing. We're all in this as a business. But then if you have that shoot to then present to a client in a fully baked out pitch deck of like, we would like to do this for you, at least you have something to go off of and it's more in their realm. So that's where a test shoot could come in, where you're saying, this is an idea that I think fits with what you're doing really well. And I would love to help you do more of that.
Yeah, especially if you can include, if you already have some work that you've done in the past that is similar to what this client would be looking for. And then you can also add in, like, here's what I've done in the past. This is what I know I can do. Here's an idea that I have that you might also resonate with. I think that's really strong because the client is seeing what you've actually executed on in the past, but that you also are coming to the table with something creative and different and specifically thinking about it and through the lens of their brand, which I think is super strong. And I think that's what you tend to do, right? You tend to show work that you've done in the past. It might not necessarily line up with the client, but it shows that what you can do. But then you try to bring something to the table pretty often saying, hey, here's an idea I have. This is what I think would be super cool for your brand. And sometimes they go for it and sometimes they don't. But I think they always appreciate that you take that extra time to do it, that you're thinking about how you would shoot something for them and how you would maybe do something new or creative that hasn't been done in the space, especially the golf space. And I think when they see that level of effort, they're going to want to at least consider you for a project.
And I think that going after things like this that you're passionate about, if it's something that you care about, you're probably thinking about it anyways. So write those ideas down. I keep a notebook with me at all moments. I always have this one. I keep one by my bed now because a lot of times when I'm falling to sleep, I come up with ideas. My new favorite one is the storyboard notebook, which is by Pilot Device. This one, and I'll show you a blank page, it's just a bunch to mock up storyboards. I don't do a ton of video. I do a little bit drone stuff, things like that. But you can also do photos in here. And the other night I had an idea and I just started sitting and sketching it out of like, how could we play this out and how could we do this? And then I talked to the person the next day that is a friend of mine and it's for bourbon and it's something else I care about. And he's like, 100% we need to do that. Now we have to find the budget and do all the stuff and make it all work. But it is at least getting that idea out of your head first step. And then if you can do a version of it to prove the concept, even better. And I understand that some people will get worried about doing this type of thing. That what if I present to a client or an agency and they just steal that idea? It could happen.
Sure.
Like just as easily as someone can go on the internet and find an image that they like and copy the exact same image with their product or do whatever. That happens all the time in the industry. And it's just the nature of it. There's not that much different lighting for clean commercial stuff when it comes down to it. It's like, oh, we're looking at this or we're looking at this. And you and I have been in so many different shoots where we have a board for the pre-light of different commercial shoots, different magazine shoots. And we're like, oh, we want the lighting kind of like this, but kind of like that. And we're just blending it all together.
It's just references that get pulled, and that's what they want for that kind of shoot. And I think, what you're talking about, putting out your ideas and just getting them out of your head, right? Like that's always great, so that they're not just like lingering. It's also, if you have an idea and it's not fully fleshed out, I don't think you need to do a massive amount of work before, if you have the idea specifically for one of your current clients. I think it's the next time you talk to the client, you tell them your idea, right? Instead of doing that. If you're trying to get a new client, I think that's where it gets a little trickier, because if you've never worked with somebody before and you shoot that type of work, so let's take sports for instance. I know a photographer in the Bay Area who was shooting some spec work for sports, trying to land clients of that work that's similar. And sometimes I think you may have to do that, where you create a test shoot, you kind of shoot this like spec work, and then you pitch it to them and you say, hey, I can do this, I think this would look good for your brand. It's still kind of the same idea. You're still using your creativity, doing something you would look good for a brand. The difference is that if it's not super brand specific, you can also use that same spec work and pitch it to 5 other brands that look very similar. You can change it a little bit in post, maybe to make it look different. If there's, a brand that you notice that really likes things super moody or whatever their current creative is. But in general, you're not going to have to like do something for every single company.
And you also can't get too attached to what that is when you pitch it. And maybe they'll hire you, and then the brand or the agency, multiple creative directors get involved. It's never going to stay the same. Yeah. And you have to know that in the commercial world, that they're hiring you because you have an idea and you have a thing, but it's a team effort to get what the client really wants. So you have to know when to just like pull it back a little bit and not let your ego get in the way just because you had this great idea. Because like I said, I didn't even shoot the thing that we initially pitched for this idea.
But knowing the story, I know that this idea made you want to build a bullet cam rig specifically for this, and you did end up using the bullet cam rig to shoot something else that same shoot, right?
Yeah, and guess what? I shot this bullet rig. It never got used.
Oh, really?
And I'm about to build it out and put it out on my own and just be like, hey, here's this thing. I've already talked to the agency. They're like, yeah, do what you want with it. Like, we think it's a great idea. We want to find a better way to do it. And that was a little bit of a misstep on my part, that I didn't get involved enough on the front end, because it's a big video production shoot. And as you know, sometimes the still photographer is not a priority on that. So I didn't get the space I wanted. There were some limitations that prevented exactly what I was hoping for, but I still got great work out of it. They were happy with everything else I shot. So it's like I can't beat myself up, like I said, that the idea didn't go exactly where I wanted it to, but I learned from it. And I'm going to make a better version of it going in the next one, and then continue to push it from there. You can't, because sometimes I've seen people, and I've done this, you have an idea, you do it, you put it out there, it doesn't go off just like you want it to, and you give up on it.
Yeah. Well, and now you went through this process, you have something to show for this idea, right? And so it's not a total loss. It just wasn't picked up and used for this one thing, but you can simply just rinse and repeat, shoot it again for somebody else, or show them that as here's something I did. We could do this for you or your brand or whatever it is.
Yeah. And that client called me, and looks like I'm going to be shooting 2 different shoots in June for them.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a lot about the relations and being creative and balancing these things. But I think if you can show something different and show that you're working towards things and not just sitting back and resting on what you've done in the past all the time, and really look forward on things in these pitch decks and these test shoots, I think it'll just make you a better photographer and also help push your creativity, so you're not just stuck doing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk video in another episode for sure. We'll probably have an entire episode dedicated to video, but just as a thought, how do you feel about shooting video or drone if it's not something typically you do for a client, and shooting that as some sort of a test shoot or spec work in order to try to land more work from that client, or at least do something different for them?
Yeah, I think it is a additional thing that if you can get over the hump, there's definitely a learning curve in video, and things that aren't logical, that as a photographer that I've had to learn about frame rates and shutter, all these different things that are just different enough that once you learn it, and I'm still learning, I'm not great at it, but it's like I love doing a little extra stuff like that to provide for a client. Because I think it's a bonus if they can get a few little things. Like you and I have talked about it. You've messed with it. I have the DJI Pocket
Yeah.
3, just a little handheld video. It's not a high-end cinema camera, but if you put an ND filter on it, it makes it look a little nice. It still shoots on a gimbal. It's still clean and simple. It can do bonus content that can be used for social, Instagram, for reels, things like that, that is a low barrier of entry. And I will never say I'm trying to replace a video crew. I have friends that do it for a living and they do stuff that blows my mind. But if it's a little extra that you can get while you're doing a shoot, great. But you need to make sure you get your first thing done, and your priority is to get the photos that you're there to get. And then if there's time to do extra, go for it and make something out of it. But it's also good to learn or partner with someone who is good at the back end of that, the editing, the color correcting, because it is different enough that you think you can do it because you're a photographer and you know Lightroom and Capture One and all this stuff. It's not the same. It's nowhere near the same.
Yeah, no, it's a totally different animal if you're actually shooting video that's going to be used for a spot, like commercial spot, as opposed to maybe something that's going to be used for social. I think most of the photographers I know that shoot video, most of it ends up on web and social, and it's not something that would actually be used in kind of a commercial ad. For you, do you enjoy shooting video? Is it something that you want to do more of, or are you more focused on the stills right now and more worried about not having to deal with it on set?
I enjoy shooting video, and I think that's where testing also comes into it, where if you just play with it and test with it and try things and learn on your own how to get something that you may want. I have my drone license. We'll get into that in another episode about why you should have your license and all of the limitations and the things that are changing. But it is a fun, different, creative outlet that you can do things that you maybe weren't able to before. So I like to do that and then teach myself how to do it in case I need it for something else. And in case it turns into a project where someone's like, we want to hire you for this, but can you also really quickly do this? And first off, yes, it's going to cost you more money always. And so many people are like, oh yeah, I'll just add that in. Like, no, there's more involved. So it needs to cost more money, but you have to set that limitation of that's not the main thing I do. And I'm not trying to replace or say that I'm as good as a specific standalone videographer that is going to do certain things in a certain way. But yeah, it's fun for me.
Some people partner with somebody, right? Like some people shoot and they're a stills guy and they have a videographer and they go and shoot together, and one person does the stills and one person does the video. And I think that's great if that's something that your clients are asking for consistently. I think for other things, it just depends. I think you kind of have to know a little bit of video now. I don't think you can just solely be a stills photographer unless you have somebody that you pull in to do video. Clients are going to start asking to do more and more motion stuff, whether it's showing that you can shoot for time lapse or little GIFs, or you can shoot full on video or drone video, like something, right? Something in your repertoire. I think you should, at least in your portfolio, show some amount of it. And then on top of that, if you are shooting a ton of spec work, if you already have a client, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't pitch a client who I don't already do what I mainly do for them and say, hey, do you want to try this new crazy thing that I'm just now trying to figure out? But if you have a current client and you are figuring something out and you think it's interesting and you're starting to shoot video, I don't think it's a bad idea to pitch the client and say, hey, I can also do this for you. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that I'm always for, if you have an existing client, an existing shoot, and if there's enough time in the schedule that you feel comfortable to get everything that they need you to get. For me, it was always like, okay, we have to get this seamless portrait to use for the key art for a TV show. Great. We have enough time in the schedule if I can get the person. I also have an additional set over here off to the side that's something that's different and cool that maybe I like more than what they were hoping for the key art, because key arts tend to have to be kind of safe. So if you can do that, and also video's another look at that, where it's like, I want to do this shoot, get it done, but then I can also roll really quick and do a few minutes of video off to the side or on the set or do whatever is needed, it shows that you're putting the extra effort in, and then that could turn into more of a different work and different things that can be added in later.
Yeah. So I guess to sum it up, we're both saying yes, shoot spec work and
Yeah.
test shoots and stay creative and try to always think about your current clients and what you could show them that you could do. Play around with video or anything you find interesting and try to get it into the pitch decks. I guess we could probably do an entire episode at some point on pitch decks. That'll be something kind of a little different. We sort of touched on it here, but I don't think a lot of photographers are putting together full-fledged pitch decks for clients.
No, and I think that's a good place to lay out like all the deliverables, including like there's a lot of different things you can start adding in there of what can be done, and I think it's a good way to even not cold call, but cold email, whatever it is, DM someone on Instagram, a client that like you've communicated with before, and be like, hey, I have this idea, put it out there. I'm of the belief of don't be scared of someone stealing your stuff. It could happen, but just push yourself creatively and do something interesting, and people will find you eventually.
Yeah, 100%. And if you've enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, be sure to follow us wherever you're listening. And we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.